It was an ordinary afternoon at the bustling town square. The sun was shining brightly, and the air was filled with the sounds of people talking, children laughing, and birds chirping in the trees. The smell of fresh popcorn and warm pretzels drifted from the food carts, making the square feel alive and happy. Families walked together, friends chatted on benches, and street performers played cheerful tunes. In the middle of all this, Emma, a blind woman in her late 30s, stepped onto the sidewalk. She moved carefully but confidently, holding onto the harness of her guide dog, Max. Max was a strong and loyal German shepherd with soft brown eyes and a shiny coat. He walked beside Emma, guiding her safely through the busy crowd. His ears twitched at every sound, always alert, always watching. People passing by glanced at Emma and Max. Some smiled politely, others barely noticed them. A few whispered, "Look, she has a guide dog," and watched with quiet admiration as they walked. Emma's face was calm, her steps steady. She trusted Max with her life, and Max never let her down. But what no one knew was that Emma and Max were not just an ordinary pair. Beneath Max's harness and gentle eyes was a past filled with bravery and sacrifice. He was not always just a guide dog. He had once served in the military, helping soldiers in dangerous places. He had saved lives, found lost people, and even protected his team from harm. But now, here he was, walking quietly with Emma, his new mission just as important. Today, though, something different was going to happen. Something that would remind everyone that Max was more than just a guide dog. As they reached the town square's fountain, Emma stopped for a moment. The sound of the water splashing was soothing. She took a deep breath and smiled. "Good boy, Max," she said softly, giving him a gentle pat. Max's tail wagged slightly, and he stood proudly by her side. Emma loved coming to the square. She liked feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and hearing the happy sounds around her. It made her feel connected to the world, even if she couldn't see it. Max made sure she could enjoy these simple moments safely. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded map written in Braille. She ran her fingers over the bumps, tracing the paths she wanted to take. "Let's go to the bakery, Max," she said. Max gave a soft woof, as if to say, "I got you," and started leading her toward the bakery. But as they moved through the crowd, a group of young men on loud motorcycles rode up to the square. Their engines roared, making people turn their heads. They laughed and talked loudly, their voices full of mischief. Emma could hear them even before they got close. She felt Max stiffen slightly, his body tense under her hand. Emma didn't worry. She trusted Max. He would always guide her through anything. The bikers parked near the fountain, their loud voices echoing through the square. They didn't notice Emma and Max at first. They were too busy joking and showing off their shiny bikes. But then, one of them, a tall man with a leather jacket and sunglasses, spotted them. He nudged his friend and pointed. "Hey, look at that dog," he said with a smirk. "Leading the lady around like a little helper." Emma heard the comment, but she didn't react. She had heard things like this before. People didn't always understand her life or how amazing Max was. She just kept walking, trusting Max to get her where she needed to go. But the bikers weren't done. The tall man walked closer, his heavy boots thudding on the pavement. "Hey, lady, does your dog take you everywhere? Even the bathroom?" The others laughed loudly at his joke. Emma's grip on Max's harness tightened. She felt her heart beat a little faster, but she stayed calm. Max walked on, ignoring them, his head held high. Another biker, a younger one with messy hair, stepped forward. "Hey, can I pet your dog?" he asked, reaching out his hand. Emma shook her head. "No, please don't." "He's working," she said politely but firmly. The young biker snickered. "Oh, come on. He's just a dog." Max let out a low, warning growl, just enough to make the young man hesitate. Emma patted Max gently, a silent reminder for him to stay calm. "He's not just a dog," she said quietly, but with confidence. The bikers laughed again, but there was something in Max's eyes that made them a little uneasy. He stood still, his strong body blocking Emma from them. His sharp ears were listening to every sound, his muscles ready to act if needed. Emma could feel the tension in the air. She knew Max would protect her, but she didn't want any trouble. "Come on, Max, let's go," she said softly, turning away from the bikers. As they walked away, she could hear the men still laughing and talking behind her. But Max stayed close, his steady steps leading her safely. If only they knew the truth. If only they knew that Max had faced things far scarier than a few loud bikers. But soon, they might find out. Because today, someone was about to push them too far. Emma stopped at the crosswalk, listening to the familiar sounds around her. Cars hummed past, people chatted, and footsteps shuffled by. She could hear the soft chirping of birds above and the occasional bark from another dog in the distance. Max, her loyal guide dog, stood beside her, his body strong and steady. His ears twitched as he listened carefully, always aware of everything around them. Emma reached down and patted Max gently. "Good boy," she whispered. Max's tail wagged slightly, but his eyes stayed focused on their path. Suddenly, the peaceful sounds of the street were broken by a loud, roaring noise. Emma felt a vibration in the ground beneath her feet. The sound grew closer and closer, and she knew what it was: motorcycles. The deep rumble of engines echoed through the street, drowning out all other noises. Emma felt Max shift slightly. His body tensed, and she could tell he was ready for whatever might happen next. The motorcycles screeched to a stop right in front of them. Emma could hear laughter, loud, rough laughter that made her uneasy. A man's voice called out, "Hey lady, you lost? Or did your mud lead you here?" His voice was mean and teasing, and Emma could hear the sneer in his tone. The other bikers laughed loudly, their voices full of mockery. Emma tightened her grip on Max's harness but didn't say anything. She had faced people like this before. The sound of heavy boots hit the pavement as the bikers circled around her. She could hear them moving closer, their footsteps slow and deliberate. Max stood still, his body tense but calm. Emma knew Max wouldn't react unless she needed him to. He was trained to stay focused and protect her. "Ah, come on," another biker said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Is your dog gonna tell you where to go next? More laughter followed, and Emma felt her cheeks flush. She hated moments like this. She hated when people didn't understand. One of the bikers, a younger one with a rough voice, stepped even closer. Emma could hear the rustle of his jacket and smell the strong scent of cigarette smoke. "Let's see what this dog can do," he said, reaching out his hand. Emma felt Max shift under her grip. She knew what was coming before it happened. The biker's hand got too close, and Max let out a low, warning growl. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. The biker jerked his hand back quickly. "Whoa," the biker said, stumbling a step back. "Chill, dog." Emma's heart pounded, but she took a deep breath and stood tall. "Please don't touch him," she said firmly. "He's working." The tall man, who seemed to be their leader, laughed again. "Working, huh? What's he gonna do? Guide you to safety?" Emma's grip on Max's harness tightened. She didn't want trouble, but she wouldn't let them push her around either. Max stood his ground, his sharp eyes locked onto the men in front of them. His muscles were tight, ready to move if Emma gave the signal. The leader stepped closer, his boots clicking against the pavement. "You know," he said in a slow, mocking tone, "dogs like that are just for show. I bet he's not so tough." Emma knew better. Max wasn't just any dog. He was strong, smart, and trained to protect. If only they knew who they were dealing with. Another biker laughed and nudged the leader. "Come on, man, let's get outta here. She's just a blind lady with a dog." But the leader wasn't done. He leaned in closer, his voice low and mean. "Blind lady or not, you're in our way." Emma's fingers tightened around Max's harness again. Her heart pounded, but she stayed calm. She could feel Max standing firm beside her, ready. He wouldn't let anything happen to her. "Let's go, Max," she said, keeping her voice steady. She took a step forward, but the leader stepped in her way. "Not so fast," he said with a grin. "We just wanna say hello to your little dog." Emma swallowed hard but kept walking. "I said, let's go, Max." Max moved smoothly, guiding Emma around the leader, ignoring the laughter behind them. But one of the bikers wasn't ready to let them go so easily. Emma felt a hand graze Max's tail. In an instant, Max spun around with a sharp bark, his eyes locked onto the biker. His body stood tall and strong, his fur bristling slightly. The biker jumped back, holding up his hands. "Whoa, easy, dog." Emma took a deep breath. "Don't touch him," she said again, this time with more strength in her voice. The leader chuckled, but there was something different in his tone now. He wasn't so sure anymore. All right," he said, stepping back. "Let's not mess with the dog." The bikers laughed nervously, but Emma could tell they were shaken. Max didn't bark again, but he didn't take his eyes off them either. He stood like a soldier, protecting her as always. Emma turned back to the crosswalk, waiting for the signal. She could still hear the bikers behind her, but they didn't try anything else. She smiled slightly, reaching down to pat Max again. "Good boy," she whispered. If only they knew. If only they knew that Max had seen far worse than a few troublemakers on motorcycles. As the crosswalk light changed, Emma took a step forward, Max guiding her safely across. She could still hear the bikers revving their engines behind her, but she didn't turn back. Max led her forward, strong and sure. Emma walked confidently, knowing that no matter what happened, she had the best protector by her side. The bikers didn't stop. They kept laughing and making fun of Emma and Max. Their loud voices filled the air, mixing with the sounds of the busy street. People walked by, some looking at the scene with curiosity, but no one stepped in to help. Emma could feel their stares, but she focused on Max. She trusted him. Max's body grew tense under Emma's gentle touch. His strong muscles tightened, and his ears flicked forward, listening to every sound. His sharp eyes watched the bikers closely. He didn't move, but Emma could feel the change in him. A low, deep growl rumbled from his throat. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to send a small shiver through the air. The bikers heard it too. The laughter around them grew softer for a moment. One of the men, a tall one with a scruffy beard, frowned. "Did you hear that?" he asked his friend. The leader of the group, the one with the skull patch on his jacket, smirked. He wasn't scared. "Is that all you got, dog?" he jeered, stepping closer. His boots scraped against the pavement as he walked, the sound sharp and slow. Emma took a deep breath. She knew Max wouldn't attack unless she gave the command, but he didn't like strangers getting too close. Emma straightened her shoulders and spoke, her voice calm but firm. "I'd back off if I were you." Her words were simple, but they carried a quiet strength. The leader stopped for a second, surprised by her confidence. Then he laughed again, loud and mocking. "What's he gonna do, lady? Bark us to death?" Emma's lips curled into a small smile. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that meant she knew something they didn't. She tilted her head slightly. "No," she said softly, her tone carrying a quiet warning. "But he's trained to do a lot more than that." The leader's grin faltered just a little. He looked at Max again, really looking this time. His eyes scanned over the dog's sleek black and tan coat. That's when he saw its small scars hidden under the fur, tiny marks that told a story. Max wasn't just any dog. There was something different about him, something strong and experienced. The leader stepped back a tiny bit, but he tried to hide it with a chuckle. "Yeah? Like what?" he asked, his voice less sure now. Emma didn't answer right away. She let the silence hang in the air for a moment. Max's eyes stayed locked on the men, his body ready and waiting. He didn't bark, he didn't lunge, he just stood his ground, solid as a rock. One of the younger bikers, the one with messy hair, nudged the leader. "Come on, man, let's just go," he muttered under his breath. "Something about this dog ain't right." But the leader didn't want to back down. He puffed out his chest and crossed his arms. "He's just a guide dog. That's all." Emma shook her head slowly. "No, he's not just a guide dog. The way she said it made the leader pause. Emma's fingers gently stroked Max's harness, and she spoke again, this time with quiet confidence. Max is a war hero. The bikers blinked. They hadn't expected that. A war hero, the scruffy one asked, looking doubtful. What, like army and stuff? Emma nodded. Yes. He's trained for more than just guiding me. He's trained to protect, to defend, and to stop anyone who tries to hurt me. She paused and then added, and trust me, he knows how. Max stood perfectly still, his tail straight and his ears high. His eyes stayed locked on the leader, never blinking. Emma could feel his quiet strength next to her. The bikers shuffled their feet uncomfortably. They didn't laugh anymore. The younger one looked at Max again, noticing the calm but powerful energy around him. Dude, maybe we should go, he whispered nervously. But the leader wasn't ready to walk away yet. He crouched down slightly, looking Max in the eyes. You telling me this mud was in the army? He asked. Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. Yes. And he saved lives. He's not afraid of loud noises, fast moves, or even people like you. She tilted her head again. Do you really want to find out what he can do? Max's growl came again, this time a little louder. It wasn't angry. It was a warning. A serious one. The leader stared at Max for a long moment, and for the first time, doubt flickered across his face. He cleared his throat and stood up. Well, whatever, he said, trying to sound tough. We were just joking around. He stepped back and glanced at his friends. Let's go. Emma didn't say anything. She just stood still, waiting, letting them make their choice. Max stayed by her side, his steady presence giving her all the confidence she needed. One by one, the bikers started moving away. They muttered to each other, stealing nervous glances at Max as they walked back to their motorcycles. The leader was the last to leave. He looked at Emma one more time, then at Max, and finally shrugged. Guess we'll leave you alone, lady, he said, his voice not as bold as before. Take care of your dog. Emma smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile he wanted to see. I always do. As the motorcycles roared to life and the bikers rode away, Emma let out a slow breath. She reached down and gave Max a gentle pat. Good boy, she whispered. Max's tail wagged just once before he returned to his calm, focused state. If only they had known from the start. If only they had known that Max was more than just a guide dog. He was a hero, a protector, and Emma's best friend. Emma took a deep breath, feeling proud of Max as they continued walking. Today had been a challenge, but Max had once again shown her that she was never alone. With Max by her side, Emma knew she could face anything. Without any warning, Max moved like lightning. In just a second, he leaped forward with incredible speed. Before the nearest biker could react, Max knocked him to the ground. The man fell with a heavy thud, his arms flailing as he hit the pavement. A loud gasp came from the crowd watching nearby. The other bikers froze in shock. Just moments ago, they had been laughing and teasing, but now they stood completely still. Their eyes were wide with surprise. Max stood in front of Emma, his body tense and strong. His ears were up, and his sharp teeth were showing. A deep, low growl rumbled from his throat, and this time, it was loud enough for everyone to hear. The biker on the ground groaned and tried to sit up, but Max didn't move. He kept his eyes locked on the rest of the gang, his tail straight and stiff. He was ready to protect Emma, no matter what. The leader, the man with the skull patch on his jacket, took a step back. His hands shook a little, and his face had lost its smug grin. "What the?" he stammered, his voice not as bold as before. He had never seen a dog move so fast, so powerfully. Emma stood tall and calm, her hand resting gently on Max's head. She didn't look afraid at all. In fact, she looked stronger than ever. Her voice was steady and clear as she spoke. "Max isn't just a guide dog," she said. The leader blinked. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice unsure now. Emma took a small step forward, still holding Max's harness. "He's a decorated war hero," she said, her tone filled with quiet pride. "He was trained to detect danger, disarm threats, and protect lives." She paused and then added firmly, "And right now, you're the threat." Max let out a sharp, loud bark that echoed through the square. The sound was strong and full of warning. People nearby gasped and whispered to each other. Some even took out their phones to record what was happening. The bikers looked at each other, their faces pale and uncertain. The younger biker with messy hair swallowed hard. "A war dog?" he asked, his voice shaking. Emma nodded. "Yes," she said. "He served with soldiers. He saved lives. He's been in places you can't even imagine." She looked at the leader. "And he knows exactly what to do when someone is a threat." The leader licked his lips nervously. He tried to laugh, but it sounded weak. "He's just a dog," he said, but he didn't sound so sure anymore. Max took a step forward, his eyes never leaving the bikers. His body was tense, every muscle ready for action. His growl grew deeper, and the leader stumbled back another step. "Look, lady," another biker said, his voice quieter now. "We didn't mean anything. We were just joking around." He looked at his friends, hoping they would agree, but no one spoke. They were too busy staring at Max. Emma stood her ground, her hand still on Max's head. "Jokes can go too far," she said firmly. "You thought I was weak because I can't see. But Max sees everything. And he knows when people are dangerous." Max barked again, even louder this time. The leader flinched, and the other bikers took several steps back. Their confidence was gone now, replaced with nervous glances and shaky hands. The biker on the ground finally scrambled to his feet, brushing dirt off his jacket. He looked at Max, then at Emma, then back at Max again. "Let's get out of here," he mumbled. The leader hesitated for a moment, looking at Emma as if he wanted to say something. But then Max took another step forward, his teeth still bared. That was enough. "Yeah, okay," the leader muttered, holding up his hands in surrender. "We're going." He turned and hurried back to his bike, his friends quickly following. The sound of engines roared again, but this time, it wasn't with confidence, it was with fear. One by one, the bikers rode away, leaving Emma and Max standing strong in the middle of the square. When they were gone, Emma finally took a deep breath and knelt down next to Max. "Good boy," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. Max relaxed, his tail wagging gently. His job was done, and he had done it well. A small crowd of people clapped and cheered. "That's an amazing dog," someone shouted. "Is he really a war hero?" another asked. Emma smiled softly and nodded. "Yes, he is," she said. "And he's my best friend." A police officer who had been watching from nearby approached Emma. "That was impressive," he said.